I'm Sean Bose, concert visual designer in Los Angeles, California. Today, we're talking to Cloaking, an audio-visual artist specializing in 3D animation, projection mapping, music videos, and real-time visuals. He's performed at raves everywhere from the underground to the metaverse. Cloaking, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here, man.
What's up, Sean? How's it
Did
going?
did I miss anything? How did I do on that intro?
Oh, that was great. I love the metaverse part. I feel like it's an amazing catch-all for everything else, right? But it's like
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
that's the perfect word.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like even in your, we'll get into this a little bit maybe later, but I feel like even in your sort of underground rave world, there's a hint of the metaverse and the future and this like futuristic tech vibe at all times. Um, and now you've been, exploring some interesting, like virtual shows and music videos and game engines and all kinds of stuff like that. Let's go back to the very beginning, real quick. Where did you grow up? What type of kid were you?
I grew up in a small town called Pullman, Washington. It's 5 miles from the border of Idaho. Pretty secluded culturally and everything wise, but it does have a college. So both of my parents were college professors. My dad was a theater professor, and my mom was a music professor. So it's kind of doomed to either end up in education or in the arts. My whole family. So it's like I have an older sister, and she's in education as well. Kind of went into psychology and stuff like that. So my whole kind of core nuclear family is in education, and I definitely did that for a bit or tried it before I was able to start doing more stuff that I wanted to do. And I think, yeah, I kind of like when growing up in such a small, isolated, weird place, kind of had to create our own fun. So I think that a lot of the roots of it are from there, trying to play music and trying to make art out of nothing with no support or any framework to jump into or become a part of. Just had to kind of do stuff just to stay sane and not go crazy and entertain ourselves.
Nice. Yeah. Were you? Do you play any instruments as a kid? Were you like putting
Yeah,
on shows even as a kid? Or, like what type of things were you doing?
as a kid. Well, I remember in elementary school playing game like we would have this kind of free form, let's play games at recess, and I would go home and I would try and think of like way we could improve the games we were playing or like invent new games, invent new rules. And I think I'd spend a lot of time doing that. And I did play, yeah, I played violin and I played the trumpet later on too. But then, so yeah, I started playing guitar. Did a rock band. That whole thing. Got really into that for a long time, and then doing like comics and costumes and stuff around that time too. I was inspired by kind of the early kind of graffiti artists and stuff, doing the kind of cartoony, subversive cartoony stuff. I was arrested for graffiti when I was 18.
Oh yeah.
I went pretty ham uh, on my town. I eventually tagged my high school and I got arrested. The police came to my house. And
Oh man, they hunted you down.
yeah, my dad let them in. That was funny. And then
Damn,
and
dad, stop snitching, bro.
then my dad was funny too. Like I like the cops came and like did their graffiti thing and like told me they're gonna like send me a court case and all this. And my dad was just super unfazed. He's like, well, like he kind of went back to the computer. He's like, well, nice work, like good one. He's like, you. And then my parents were divorced, and he's like, you should probably call your mom. I was like, okay. And I went over to my mom's house, and she had the complete opposite reaction of like crying and uh, yeah, just being like, you do what?
Oh no.
Vandalized public property.
What kind of graffiti were you doing? Was it like throw up stuff, or was it just tagging stuff? Or
I mean, it was coming from a good place. It was like it was me and my friend, and we were really trying to make art art. You know, we weren't trying to just fuck shit up or write our names. We were trying to like draw cool pictures and stuff, or just like express ourselves.
More like illustrative type stuff.
Yeah, like characters and scenes and stuff. And we would bring a lot of graffiti cans and we'd like spend a lot of time on it. You know, it was, but yeah, it was illegal and wrong.
Nice. That's awesome though.
Yeah. And then I went to this school called Evergreen after college, and that was rad. That was kind of where my world opened up a lot, and I really started to meet other artists and people trying to play music and do art, and there's actual outlets to do stuff. And
were you studying art there? What were you studying?
yeah, so at first I was like doing like straight up art and like painting and sculpture, and it's a really weird school. It doesn't have grades. It's like, you know, it has a hippie reputation, and so everything is kind of, you know, multidisciplinary where they mix art and other things. And then I did get into the film program. There's one film class, and I did the film class for 2 years, basically the last 2 years. And I made these films. I used to make costumes and then make films. So I kind of made funny like creature costumes. And I have the film too. It'd be funny to link some of that stuff.
Oh yeah, we're gonna need a clip of that.
Yeah.
What was it called? What was the name?
Into the Valley of the Leafling.
All right. I can't wait to see. What's the? Can you give us a synopsis, or was it sort of a plotless art
I think
experiment?
Yeah, kind of both, but it's hard for me to remember a little bit. But I think that one time we were hanging out with some friends and we got a phone call and they had this. You remember they used to have the bear, like the animal crackers in the shape of a bear. About this big. Well, they had one of those bears, but it was just full of psychedelic mushrooms, and we all just took these mushrooms and casually, like, probably took like a heroic dose, and we went to the forest, and it was really fun. But I felt like I really actually kind of had this experience and saw like some of these beings and creatures almost visited me, and then I spent a year or two kind of almost recreating just this one kind of moment of seeing kind of these creatures come out of the leaves and visit me, and just weird, like a weird experience. And it's funny that I was in college, you know, essentially, and I got a grant from the college to make the movie too, which is rad. But yeah,
yes.
essentially recreating this experience.
That's awesome, man. I love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Some of the best things come out of just being in college with a bunch of buddies, doing some mushrooms and talking to trees, you know?
Like that, yeah.
And then getting the college to pay for it. It's like amazing.
But that was almost all separate like that. It wasn't maybe almost till 7 or 8 years later that I started getting into video more seriously. And I think a friend in New York showed me Resolume, my friend Vasilis.
So where is the college located? Sorry.
Yeah, so the college is in Olympia. And yeah, there's kind of this huge like brownout of trying to leave there. I moved to Providence for a year, just trying to get out. Like, I just didn't know the world. And then I ended up in New York for a while. I kind of went to New Orleans, New York, kind of all over the place. Still trying to kind of do music and stuff, and just not really like finding my place in the world or what I wanted to do. But then yeah, there's got like a good friend, you know, showed me Resolume, and I thought it was really cool. I thought, oh, you could make some visuals to your own music. I started messing around with it really casually. Just the fact you could play music into it and it would react, or you could set up a little animation and have the music kind of drive some parameters or something, was my initial interest in it. And then I came to LA, and my first real gigs were with this band called Autolux, which is kind of a long story, but I was a really big fan of the band, and I wrote to them on MySpace way back in high school, and I would send them my drawings and stuff. Yeah. And they responded, and they gave me their phone number on MySpace, which is wild. And I would like call them and they talk to them, and they're like my heroes, so I thought it was rad. I just made some art for them, just so I would like make it and send it to them. And so I had kind of just disconnected with them from way back. And
Yeah.
then I ended up in LA, and I just started like kind of just hitting them up, and I just showing them stuff. And I casually showed them. We were talking about doing a music video, which I was stoked on, and I didn't. I did do the music video, but then I kind of got one upped by this guy, the late Thomas McCann, who's like a super talented 3D artist. So I made this whole music video, and then he kind of dropped a much better music video on them after mine was done. So they went with his.
Oh, damn.
That's, kind of like a good intro to the industry. But then maybe they felt bad about that, and then they offered. They're like, oh, like I casually showed them, oh, look, I kind of Resolume, and I can make this ball kind of pulse, or like played some music and made some stuff move around, and they were like, what?
Nice.
And they asked me to go on tour with them. So that's where it really started. I went on like a 3-month tour with Autolux,
Wow.
all the US, and we did Europe and stuff like that. And they rented a 7K projector and sometimes like a 10K projector. Really hooked it up for me. And we had a big scrim we would tour with, so we set up a scrim and set up the projector every night in random situations. And then we did some crazy stuff. We did the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and we did Coachella, Coachella stage with like LED walls and stuff like that when they kind of at the end for those.
Nice.
And
Is
Coachella
that
too, which is weird because you do it like it's like a Groundhog's Day thing where you like do it and then you like do it again the next week.
nice? Yeah. That was all on this first tour. You hit all that stuff, or
Yeah, and I had
wow,
using
hit
like
the ground running.
I did the Mac. I had like a old MacBook laptop and Resolume and a funny, really clunky MIDI controller, and that was it. And I didn't have any 3D graphics. Just using the Resolume built-in stuff.
Wow, really?
Didn't
And
know what I
all
was
like
doing.
generators and stuff.
Yeah, and like didn't know what I was doing
Wow.
at all. But I guess learned kind of for being so. I remember like having like like I gave you like an HDMI and a VGA. I remember the first night like using the HDMI and then being like, well, I'm kind of nervous about it like coming out. So then I started using the VGA. Like, like really I like used the VGA the whole tour. And I like didn't even understand
Yeah.
the
It's
difference,
like this
right?
is sick. You could screw in. It's
Yeah,
much
like
better.
it's a little bit more secure. I kind of like that. And so yeah, like that's how little I knew from even doing those shows. Like really didn't know what I was doing. But there were visuals, every night on the wall. I worked out.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, so just like timeline wise, you just come out to LA pretty much when you did this. What year was that? When were you doing this?
I'm really bad with time.
No,
It might have been 4 or 5 years ago.
okay.
Maybe possibly 2017.
And what were you doing? Were you doing anything else for work at this time when you were just getting started, or were you just like, I'm going for it. I'm a freelancer. I'm doing visuals, whatever the fuck it takes. I'm an artist.
I had zero industry cred. Like the way I found a weird job where you could work for Google as an SEO, where you just looked at like you worked from home and just looked at advertisements. Like a really weird, sketchy job. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna stop doing this and just go on this tour. And that didn't even occur to. And I think I had maybe heard of a couple. I think I did have the idea a little bit loosely because I think before that I had written a couple parties because I saw that there were parties and stuff. And when I moved here, I wrote to them and I said, oh, would you want visuals at your party, or could I do visuals at your party or something? And they like didn't respond or were like, no. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that didn't work out, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't like try anything more than that. Or like, and then got this thing, and then I was back. So then that was like a crazy experience. And then I was just back in my house in LA and just kind of like, oh, okay, well, would like to keep doing that. I don't really know how. And this kind of the next step kind of relates to imminent and how we know each other because um, Tara was doing Futra
Mm-hmm.
and they had this art show and I thought the art show looked really cool and I didn't know who they were. But I wrote to Futura and I was like, oh, could I be in your art show? And I did this kind of audio visual work, video work. And they wrote back really nice and they're like, oh no, you can't. It's the art show's full or something. And I was like, okay, thank you for writing back. And then maybe a week or two goes by and they're back and they're like, oh, but actually we're having an after party, a warehouse after party. Do you want to come do visuals at the after party? So
Nice.
yeah, I do. So I went, and it turned out to be maybe more of a rave than a future after party. So that was just kind of my first experience. And I just kind of set up I had a projector that I bought from eBay for $100, and I still had my MacBook and my VGA cable, and that's the extent of my gear. And I set up, and I like
All you
arrived
need.
like late, and like the promoter was just like, "There's a extension cord in the corner somewhere." So I go scramble in the dark and set up this stuff and do the first party. And then that was insane. Like I was like, whoa, this is wild. And then even hadn't really been to stuff like that. And then, just the next week, like, oh, I saw your stuff at this party. Do you want to do my party? And then just 4 years went by basically doing that, like just keep doing it and learning, yeah, and kind of learning uh more, start using HDMI cables, get into the PC world, then start doing 3D graphics to just kind of bolster what I was doing already.
Okay.
And then just got more into that. And then 2020 hit and that's all over. And then just strictly, been trying to learn 2D and trying to do this stuff. I think like everyone has.
Yeah. Let's dig into those first few years of VJ. You're pretty much just VJing shows and parties and raves and things like that for the first like few years in LA.
Yeah, like definitely, first was just doing that. So there was like a very funny kind of situation where after the second, so then that first party, then the 1 week goes by, I do one more party, get that one set up like a little better. And then one more week goes by and I kind of get a call from the promoter and we're like, oh, we're at this house, like this guy wants to meet you. And that also was strange. And we went over this really fancy, almost like 5,000 square foot house in the arts district. And this guy had bought 20 projectors off some weird auction. And he had them all lined up in this thing. He's like, I saw your visuals that I happened to go to this party and I saw your visuals and I was just like, I want to do that. And I bought these projectors and we're going to throw parties here and you're going to do the visuals or something. And I was like, feeling kind of sketched out. And I remember even I looked the guy, I Googled the guy's name and the first thing that comes up is that he's in a lawsuit for like not paying his employees. It's like the first Google result or something.
That's promising.
And he ended up being a really sweet guy. And it was this kind of cool, he was always talking about it like it was Studio 54 in the modern sense. But he did have this spot and it became a really popular spot for doing parties. And it was super different than everything else because it was kind of a luxury loft that then they would have these kind of seedy after hours in.
Interesting.
And he had my back and he would do these bookings and he'd be like, oh, you have to pay my visual guy. You have to.
Yeah.
And then I met a
That was
lot of,
like part of the package. It just
yeah.
became part of the
And
whole
so
thing.
that's how I got more plugged into because then I would meet a lot of people. They would maybe not want visuals, but then we would do them and then they really like it. And then that's how I would keep working with a lot of people I met through that initial.
So what do you think it is that you were doing at the time that made people take notice and want to find you afterwards? Like were you talking to people during the show? Was it just the work? Was there something unique about the work? What
Well,
do you think it was?
I'm terrible at the talking to people part. I will like go out of my way to like not talk to DJs, not to network.
Interesting approach. Yeah.
But it's just weird. This
Tell
is
me
kind
more.
of my personality. I just, just shy almost.
Yeah.
And but I think it's an obscure thing. So there's not a ton of people trying to do it, and there wasn't people trying to do it in that avenue. And then as far as maybe the people that were doing it, they probably would eventually succumb to laziness or getting too high or drunk and dropping the ball, even in their first event.
Hmm.
But I think that every single event I did, I had this profound stress about. That I was like, this has to go well and it has to be really good, even despite my lack of knowledge and equipment. I would try really hard. I really wanted that next gig every time.
Hmm.
And so I think maybe I was just the only person trying. I guess at that point. I don't
Okay.
think there's anything at that time that was crazy profound about what I was doing. But
Yeah.
in fact, there were
Interesting.
visuals, and then I don't think I've had promoters like later down the line be like, just be kind of like, you're the only one who cares. You're the only feature that hardly cares.
Nice. I
So,
mean,
yeah,
yeah.
I care about it. And I try and put myself in their shoes. Like, let's make a good event. I want to do whatever I can to make it a positive experience for the consumer party goer.
What do you think? What do you think it is that brings it to that next level or sets you apart from like aside from just trying? Like, what are some of the things that you do above and beyond um, that make it a good show?
Well, I think back in the day, so then when I did start learning 3D, I would get this booking or I'd get a party and I would maybe look at the flyer, try and get a vibe. And I'd spend the entire week like in my room making like 30 or 40 clips for that party. To really try and bring fresh work that I felt fit the vibe. And then uh, bring that out for the event. So kind of like a bespoke thing. I'm just doing that for free too. I'm just like making this stuff just to improve the vibe and putting a ton of work in, putting so much work in for $300 or $200 or something.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I was just stoked. I was like, this is awesome. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, well, that definitely sets you apart from most VJs who like, for their $300, they're going to show up with, if the gig's not providing content, then like they're showing up with fucking Beeple loops or whatever they have from the last gig or like whatever the hell it is. Maybe they made some of their own stuff, but they're definitely not making like custom themed content for each
Yeah,
show.
I think that's all it was, right? So you're like, oh, there's this guy that if you hire him, he'll just make some loops for your party. And
Mm.
they also, that's what's also kind of magical and cool, I guess, about doing these kind of events, right? Is they're illegal and they're kind of secret, and then you go and you're in the dark, and then maybe you hear this thing and you see this thing, and it just kind of happens, just like any show. It's a moment, and there can be some mystical, even though it's digital art, there can still be some kind of aura because you're projecting this light on this space and there's the people in it. And then maybe that's all it is because just they see this one loop you made just one time.
Yeah.
And there's something kind of cool about that.
Yeah, definitely.
Weird aura to it.
It's like ethereal nature of it.
Yeah.
It's there just for the moment and then it's gone. If you weren't there, you don't get that experience.
Yeah. Same as a DJ set. You can record it, but there's also an aura to seeing a DJ set happen or hearing it before your eyes, before your ears.
Yeah. Yeah. And it unfolds based on, the energy in the room and the vibe of the space and all this stuff. It all kind of comes together.
Yeah.
Do you mentioned that, some of these warehouse gigs are like illegal kind of pop-up things. Do you have any wild stories about any of that? Any like real high points or real like sketchy points in the underground rave uh, VJ scene?
Which would you rather hear, high points or low points?
Whatever comes to mind first, maybe one of each, but
It's so, like it's weird to reflect on it and talk about it. Also, because this has been this year of break, it feels like a lifetime ago that this stuff happened. And even when it was happening, I almost couldn't really keep track. I don't have a very, categorical memory, and it kind of became this blur of stress and fun and bad vibes and good vibes. And just promoters, like I don't remember half the parties I worked. Just
yeah.
because it was one a week for so long and stuff. But yeah, like they're trying to think. Like, I mean, one of the stories or just kind of mind blowing things was that place I was talking about where the guy who had the projectors and kind of put me on early on. He found out that the Mongols headquarters was next door to where his spot was. And they'd kind of taken an interest in just what he was doing and we're kind of gonna come through to shut it down, kind of like, oh, this is our block and you can't just throw raves here. But then the opposite happened where they showed up and I mean he credits this to the visuals and stuff, but he was just like they dug it and they were like, this is awesome. And they wanted to throw a party.
Oh no shit.
And,
Wow.
and so I get this call from him and he's like, oh, could you come work this weekend and do this Mongol party? And I'm like, well, what's it pay? What's the deal? And he's like, it doesn't pay anything. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna do it. And he's like, it got kind of serious. So I was like, please do this for me.
He's like, you get to live, bro.
Yeah, I don't want to die or whatever. And like, I was like, okay, and yeah, we do it. And yeah, it was just the most insane thing ever. Really, I mean, I brought a friend, and there was like the guy. We're the only like non-Mongols, the kind of space owner, and me and my friend who were there, and just this insane. Like I got escorted. The whole block got shut down, and then we had to get escorted by these Mongols like into the event. And the event was a birthday party of the wife of the leader of the Mongols.
Oh wow.
Um, and just so many insane things. Lots of like open weapons. Just it's like it was kind of like a no rules strip club slash rave, but mostly on the strip club vibe.
Wow.
Just like 300 guys just standing on the dance floor, like I'm just like not dancing. Like, and then even create, and this is kind of around when the ghost ship happened, and there's starting to be crackdowns. And the cops had like come, like the whole squad of cops had come to this guy. He was really out there guy, but they came to his house and were like, we know what you're doing. We're gonna shut you down if you have an event. And he was just like, well, I'll see you tonight then. Like that was like his vibe to the cops. And then,
Damn. Ballsy.
and then the cops did. So then even wilder, the cops do. And I'm already having like a weird night. Like I'm like walking around like I'm so scared. And then the cops come, a whole squad of police come to the Mongols event, maybe 20 police. And I'm just kind of straight up like ready to run out the door. Like I'm like, this is it.
Yeah,
Like,
if shit pops off, I'm
about to be a
out of here.
firefighter die. And the cops just stand in a perimeter. There's like a big main room where the strip club was and where all the Mongols were kind of congregating and openly doing drugs and having weapons and stuff. And the cops just stand around like the whole thing in like a square, don't do anything, and then maybe leave 30 minutes later. So that was super weird to witness too, just kind of seeing like, oh, you know, this gang almost has precedence over the police, or the police are scared to.
Yeah, welcome to
Uncles.
dealing with the LAPD, I guess.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was a weird one. And yeah, just lots of, I don't even know. That was just insane. That truly was like some underbelly kind of Breaking Bad
That's pretty intense.
kind of thing.
I feel like you've told me some stories when we were working together over at Imminent that I mean, it's just classic stuff of like having to, something gets busted and you gotta like grab all your shit and get the fuck out of there. Like your projector's on the ceiling. Like, do I leave it? Do I run up on a ladder real quick? Like, what the fuck do I do?
I've had that experience where like the cops, all of a sudden there's just like a SWAT team swarming the dance floor, and then it's like this, and then like always kind of mad too because it's like, oh, I'm the only, like the promoter is somehow the first one, like they're already somehow 5 miles away, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and then it's like let everyone get arrested. Like that happens every time. I'm like, wow, thanks
Yeah.
guys. But yeah, I had one situation where I had my nicer projector there. Like I eventually bought some 6K projectors and stuff, and I was like, man. And my girlfriend was, scared and just like, just leave it. I was like, hell no. Like if I'm not like, I know how this, I'm not gonna just because the only thing on my mind is if I leave the gear in the warehouse, A, will the cops confiscate it? B, will I ever get the warehouse owner to open up the door and let me get my shit?
Right.
So those both are just avenues I don't want to go down. So I'm getting my projector, I'm getting my like off a truss and like packing up my computer and my cables by myself, and the cop just like literally 5 cops just like they're not doing anything, they're just yelling at me like, "Sir, put that down. You need to leave the premises," And I'm just being like, "I need 2 minutes, please. Let me pack this up." And they're just like, just yelling, but they don't do anything. But it's like, it just makes it, there's like literally cops like trying to pack up your stuff, and it's just like cops like, "Stop doing that."
It's
Cops
like,
like, "No,
bro, I'm at work, man. Chill. Come on.
please, like, go arrest the promoter, please, or whatever." Like,
Yeah, right.
I'm
It's not my shit.
not the person to blame for this situation.
Man, that's wild. That's a. Do you enjoy that like adventurous aspect to it? Does that
Um,
is that part of the draw, or is
no,
it more about the
nothing.
music, or like what's the?
I think that I discovered over time as I was making like making sometimes like getting booked for the party and making the content and then getting maybe more involved in the community and stuff. And I'm like, wait, you guys get paid for this part of your job? Kind of thing. And then kind of realizing that that's maybe more, I think I was only getting these projectors and setting this stuff up to show my art that I wanted to create.
Mhm.
It's a really good medium, and it's kind of cool. Like, I mean, I was like my own TV channel, right? Like I have my own means of production. Everything is an enclosed system. I have the computer, make the visuals. I set up my own device to show the visuals. I'm my own kind of one man factory, visual factory. I
Yeah.
think that part about it is rad. But then as I got gigs where maybe I'd roll up and it'd be professional and secure, and they would have an LED wall and bring you a water and pay you nicely and stuff. I'm like, well, I would greatly prefer to do this every time.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I have no interest in that kind of stuff. I'm not like a specifically some underground head or something. It was just a means to an end,
Mhm.
and just being just super small independent artist with no backing of any kind, no studio or artist I was connected to is a good way. And then I kind of got involved and then just got known for doing that and kept doing it. But I always wanted to make content or do something else.
Yeah.
And I also, it really wears you out. It's not a sustainable thing to
Mm.
do for your brain or soul or anything.
Yeah. Long nights all the time,
Yeah.
and the
So
occasional
as
running.
things are opening up, I'm like, I don't even know if I want to go back to that. And it's been a year of trying to doing other stuff, which has been really cool. And what I've wanted to do is, and it like, it was a weird blessing in a weird way because I always was like, I want to stop doing these parties and I want to focus on doing other stuff. So it wasn't cool to have a pause and get to do other things. That being said, I do really want to go to some parties and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I'm like itching for some music,
Yeah,
but it was really nice this past year to to finally get that free time. We were that mythical free time we were all looking for, and yeah, and just the opportunity to explore. Um, well, I guess let's skip to there real quick. What type of things did you explore in this weird ass year of 2020?
I think like in the really early days, I was trying to do kind of funny like virtual concerts and really bad ones with Unity. I'd like pump Resolume into Unity and do this stuff. And
Yeah.
I remember a couple of fun ones are just like a lot of like Drew and a lot of the imminent crew was like in the comments and they're like, move the camera over there. And then I'd like move the camera. And it's like kind of
Oh, fuck.
like interactive, like fun stuff. But then
Yeah, those were sick, dude.
that was funny too, because then I was like, oh well, I want to like do this and that, and like I need to like I'd hit these roadblocks and stuff I wanted to improve because it's always just like a joke test kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then just got like I feel like a whole year went by and I like didn't solve this. Or like I got a lot of like leeway into it. But yeah, I didn't ever get back into it, right? And I think a lot of the people too was learning Unreal, getting like also switching from Unity to Unreal because that seemed really alluring. And I definitely won't go back. I really think Unreal is the jam right now and is going places. So yeah, a lot of time learning Unreal. And I spent a good chunk of the year working at Imminent. Not a good chunk, but a month, 2 months, 3 months working at Imminent, and that was all Unreal stuff.
Yeah.
And I also bought a motion capture suit, kind of right before that, so that kind of coincided. Like that kind of came to Imminent, which is a studio that does VJ loops, but they had switched to doing Unreal stuff, and I kind of came in there working on a music video, like, oh, we have all this motion capture data that didn't work out very well. And I was like, oh well, I bought a motion capture suit, and it looks a little better than that because they were using the vibe trackers, you know, and that's a sweet thing, but it has a lot of problems I think with doing the full human thing. And I got the Rococo suit, so I ended up doing a ton of kind of workflow stuff with motion capture to Unreal.
Nice.
And that was and for virtual concerts and for music videos and stuff like that. And that was dope.
Yeah. Hell yeah. So you just bought that. You bought the suit to fuck around with your own virtual shows at first, or just to like mess with it?
Well, I think just doing it. I think I started doing more animated, like really not doing VJ loops and really doing almost story-driven animations in Cinema 4D.
Yeah.
And so and also kind of just doubling down on okay, it's the pandemic, we're doing this different kind of content now. So yeah, you buying the suit to focus on that, kind of doubling down on that. And then it kind of found its heaviest application at Imminent.
Nice.
Which was just dope. And like and also they called me up and were like, we want to do this virtual fashion show and stuff and in Unreal, and I was like, well, I actually don't know Unreal very well. Maybe mess around in it in a week or two. And they're like, that's okay, we're all gonna learn. Everybody's scrambling to learn Unreal right now. So we're just gonna come and we're just gonna figure it out.
Nice.
And I feel like I feel like that's kind of still where my interest lies. Doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you mean like virtual and like game engine driven content and narrative stuff, or just experimental kind of new tech content in general?
I mean, I think any of that stuff is really exciting, and like the kind of stuff you're doing maybe being the most interesting application or the most powerful, most interesting application. But obviously that requires this extreme resources to do that.
Yeah.
Everything like there's something doing motion capture and then retargeting it and then putting it on Unreal and then seeing the character move around fully textured in an environment. There's just something that doesn't get old about that.
Yeah.
And it's something really fun about recording. When motion capture does work out and you're recording it, it's one of the most fun things you can do in 3D because 3D is so not fun.
Yeah.
You do something that is interactive and you actually move your body around and act, I guess. That's all really dope.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And character animation is so fucking hard and tedious.
Yeah.
For something that like, yeah, you just do naturally.
Yeah.
It's like the translation is so difficult. So to be able to do something in a more intuitive, natural way and just record it. It's really good, really powerful.
Exactly. I did one project too after Imminent where I worked with this band called Kunzite, which is kind of the reformed Rat-a-tat band, and
Nice. I wasn't aware of that.
they have a good they're a great sound. It's kind of like Rat-a-tat with singing,
Okay.
kind of like the vibe. But yeah, they didn't want to like they're like, oh, we want this dance music video in space, and we kind of want it to be like funny and stuff like that. And we had a bunch of Zoom calls, and that was perfect because yeah, me and my girlfriend Izzy recorded a lot of the dancing and stuff over at her house. And we just get
Nice.
kind of drunk and dance to this song. And that was fun.
Not a
And
bad day at work. That.
yeah, and yeah, just kind of translating that into the Unreal. Yeah, it was a blast. And I like kind of made this whole world in Unreal and had all these different stages, and you kind of like zoom around and check that out.
Killer.
So definitely, yeah, I think that. What's your experience been in Unreal? Like, do you make VJ loops in it, or do you make videos in it, or are you just like technically figuring out this XR stuff in it?
Yeah, I mean, most of it has been just like technical workflow stuff for XR between Unreal and Disguise, and like using that workflow for XR, making some content for that, especially to like demo new features and like show off what is possible. Um, that's been most of it. Uh, I'd like to use it more for just like content in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like to go as concerts come back, kind of go back into that world a little bit because I just miss that vibe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see how Unreal gets used moving forward as it's become more of like this virtual production tool and like a motion graphics tool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're really putting a lot of time and resources into making it like actually useful for that. We were kind of bastardizing it to do that for the last like 8 months or so. But
Oh, they added all this, yeah, with the new releases and stuff. They're adding so much, trying to help out people who are in your position.
yeah, that's pretty much been their focus is like on this, yeah, virtual production and like motion graphics side of it. And I mean, it's kind of dope. Like the new render queue features and stuff like that are really sick, and like all the like DMX integration and stuff like that. It's just it's starting to get really really sick for these like more some of the applications that we're used to, which is nice. Um, like I think is people are you're not going to see so many like octane artists out there in the world in a few years. It's going to be mostly like Unreal and Notch artists, I think.
Oh, and you mean in the live context, or you mean in general?
Yeah, like in live and in motion graphics in general. I mean, but definitely in like concert visuals and music videos and stuff where it's like the deadlines are way too short and you want to do something super weird. Like we've all been learning it and are like, yeah, fuck rendering. This is great.
I
Yeah.
think doing the Kunzite video was the first Unreal client kind of thing. That was my own client, not working for someone else.
Yeah.
And like I'm like, well, they couldn't make a video in two. They're like, can you do it in 2 weeks? And I'm like, well, would you guys be open to using Unreal? And they're like, what's that? I'm like, never mind. Yeah, we can do it in 2 weeks. And, I mean, obviously, I shouldn't have asked them that. And then yeah, like as things like I gave them the first pass of the video in like 3 days. I was just like, I'm gonna like
Wow.
do a crazy thing where and it was like definitely really a lot of that most of that stuff got scrapped, but just the fact I could make it, just do the mocap, drop it in, make some camera movements, record it, send it to the client, and then they look at it and they're like, oh, what if that guy had an alien head instead of a human head? They're like,
Yeah.
okay. And then I just, you just drop the, it's like, it's not like a stressful thing. You're like, okay, you just kind of drop in the new asset, put it on the head, yeah, and then just re-render it. And then it's
just
like,
record it again. It's not like that doesn't become like another like week-long render
yeah,
thing for that one shot,
the kind of thing you get before, like you get a client note before, and you're like, oh god, fuck yeah, like, but now, yeah, and that's the way it should be. Just like, because it's really just technology getting in the way of the creative conversation, where like so much before, when you're dealing with clients, you're kind of just campaigning for the limitations of the technology. You're like, well, let's really decide what we want because it takes 3 days to render, and that sucks. Um, right? Where you just kind of be like campaigning for, oh well, yeah, let's change it. Let's mix it up. Let's try and improve it.
Yeah,
That's a
for
huge.
sure. Definitely allows for a lot more like back and forth collaboration
Yeah,
without breeding resentment.
yeah. When you're doing these XR stages, do you feel a sense of that? Like, is there a sense of like, oh, let's move that asset over here. Let's swap this asset and
Yeah, I mean that's the cool thing about it is like while you're in the room for the shoot, you can run a take and the director can be like, hey, actually can we like move that over there, brighten up this corner and like make that car blue, and you're like, yeah, sure. Tick, 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 tick. And then set changes immediately, next take.
are you the
It's
one
how they want it.
moving around the lights and stuff like that in the Unreal scene?
I mean, yeah, you can pretty much move or change anything,
Mm.
like
Does
even
that mean
while the
that
scene is
that's
running.
you like clicking it, doing it? Like that's you like
Yeah, that's basically my role during the shoot process, is like to drive the scene during the shoot and like make any sort of live edits that need to happen.
yeah, totally.
Whether that's in Unreal or in Notch, you can do the same thing with like
Yeah.
this live editing, which is, I mean, that's insane. With rendered content, like that shit was rendered out last week and we're not changing it now, dude. It's the shoot. Like you're done. Yeah. So to be able to switch that up uh, is pretty crazy. There's drawbacks to it, of course, because you kind of take advantage of that and nobody makes any fucking decisions until the day of the shoot, and you're like, we do need a little bit of a creative process here. Like we can't like design this whole thing the day of,
Yeah.
but
Almost them knowing that is negative. It's like, oh,
yeah, exactly. It's better, it's almost better to like surprise them with it because
yeah,
they're going to ask the question. So to be able to say yes in the moment is great, but yeah, when they know, when you're in those initial meetings and they're like, we could do anything, we could change it. Oh, we'll just decide that on the day. It's like, no, dude, we need to make something and we could tweak it.
yeah,
Well,
because Unreal is
like you still have to
clunky.
model things and bring it in and
Yeah,
optimize. Like you
it's
can't do
there's a
everything.
lot of clunky aspects to it. It's not just like flipping things around, and that's
Yeah.
the biggest change to me is, or like where it is where maybe it does kind of even out, right? Because you're working in C4D and you get this scene together. You're kind of coming together. Like you got your elements and your environment and your character and stuff is looking good. But then if you want to bring that to Unreal, kind of and like the way I work in C4D is just like blah blah blah, like just kind of throwing stuff in the hierarchy, grouping it
Yeah.
really quick, really like a fast and dirty process. But then when you want to go, okay, I'm not going to render in Cinema 4D, we're going to go to Unreal. Then there's like kind of a whole maybe an hour longer process of optimizing your scene, right? You want as few objects. You have a cloner with like 500 cylinders in it. Those are all going to come in separately in Unreal. And
Yeah.
you have to optimize that, your textures, organize. So it's a huge kind of, data organization process that's not super fun.
Yeah, Cinema 4D is much more like an artist tool, and you can tell that Unreal is like a game programmer's first tool.
Yeah.
It's definitely artist friendly by comparison to some other things, but like you got to have your UVs right. Like you got to kind of have things buttoned up a little bit,
And
especially if you're trying to run it like 60 frames per second or something. Like
right.
it's
So it's all, yes, this huge optimization. kind of knowledge and workflow. And you also have this kind of intuition of kind of like looking at some polygons and some textures and being like, that's fucked. Like we need to fix that before we even go into Unreal. And that was like my biggest lesson working at Imminent, where we did this Puma thing, and it's kind of my project for like 2 months, and it kind of came down to it where they're kind of making changes to the clothing and the fit, and I was working in Marvelous, doing these sweatshirts and stuff, and keep on making minor adjustments to it, and they kind of finally decide the final like order of clothes they want in the fashion show, and they're going to be on these skeletons. And I get it all going. I get the animation. I model the runway. I animate the walks. I have all the clothes in Marvelous, all textured. Everything's ready to go, but it's kind of this last step of getting that into Unreal. And I'd be like trying to import one, and just the whole thing would crash. And then I would start a new project and be importing one, and I'd be sitting there for like 15 minutes, like waiting for it to like import. And then maybe like what, and I would like, and then there'd always be like one thing wrong. Like it would combine like two textures together or something.
No.
That needed separate, or just like all this. It was such a, there's like 12 things. So it'd be like 12. So 50 minutes is one thing, but then 12 times 15 times everything having a mistake. And I kept on having these 12-hour days just trying to get it to work.
Mm-hmm.
And it was getting just really grindy, and really the vibe with everyone was getting really stressed, and no one kind of knew what was wrong. And then we kind of do get it all done, and me and Colin is so good at Unreal, and he's so smart and such a problem solver, so he's like awesome to work with. So he was backing me up a lot, but then we kind of get this all done, right? And then there was this person that made these shoes like super realistic, because they also had shoes in the fashion shows. This modeler had made these shoes.
Yeah.
I think we've been kind of looking at everything else, but it turned out the shoes had 1 million polygons. So, we just didn't realize we were importing a 2 million polygon skinned model every time, because we didn't optimize the shoe model. Or also think, and it's kind of a mistake too, maybe of, oh, can you give us a high poly version of the shoe and a shoe that's ready to go in Unreal?
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, just how frustrating that process was, and just realized, like, right at the end, we're like, oh, the shoes have 1 million polygons. I was like, oh, what the fuck? Why? And like they just don't even, you can't even see them barely in the shot,
Yeah, right. They're way in the background, just like completely dense with polygons.
It's like a black, like, yeah. So that was like a huge Unreal, just not knowing Unreal, doing it wrong.
Yeah, it's a serious learning curve. I've been using it almost exclusively for like the past year, and I still am like, I do not know Unreal.
Yeah.
And it is so frustrating. But I'm like teaching other people how to use it. It's crazy.
Yeah. But there's something really sweet about, I think, using it just to make animations is really not that daunting.
Mm.
And that is really dope. I mean, there is some work to get your assets in there and ready, but the overall, and sequencer at first is like, what? But then you think when it's a really dope tool. I mean, it's almost like Premiere inside of Unreal.
Yeah.
Like, you could edit a whole video in there.
Once you learn its quirks, it's pretty insane. Yeah.
And so using it, and like the experience of making a video in there is weirdly rewarding. Like when I was making the Kunzite thing, I kept on just kind of feeling, you kind of feel like you're in that world a little bit, because it's so already rendered.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of like flying around. Then you get kind of different creative ideas from looking around the zone.
Yeah. More 3D packages need like the WASD flying around navigation. It's like,
that part's amazing.
It's so good. I miss that when I go back to cinema now. It's like,
feels really clunky.
Where is it? Yeah, it's so just be able to like swoop over to something. It's really nice.
I mean, Cinema 4D feels amazing because it's like, this makes sense. You're like, I understand what's going on. What's like amazing about that? It feels so retro and simplistic. You're like,
yeah, right. It's like It's an old chair. It's comfortable.
Do some polygon modeling.
You got all your plugins in there and everything, like all your assets and stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
I
man,
mean,
I haven't had to build a material in like 4 years. What the fuck am I doing in this Unreal thing?
but then yeah, you'd be like working closely with Cinema 4D and Unreal, right? You can't just like make something from scratch in Unreal unless you're just reorganizing mega scans.
Yeah. Yeah, you do still need a 3D package.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, man. Weird year. What are you let's see. Let's go back a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about back when there was jobs and
Yeah.
work. Um, and you were kind of getting into the 3D content game. Um, and just sort of like general kind of businessy type things. Nothing too specific, but
Yeah.
like what were you doing?
I could talk a little bit about like coming out of the rave being into the other industries.
Yeah, let's talk about that. This sort of middle period that we just skipped over.
Because yeah, I think the other things I got into that feel a lot more real to me is I think yeah, I started maybe getting picked up to do music videos and also started getting picked up to maybe do more serious events.
yeah, how did that transition happen?
And it's it's a bit like straight up where I think that the first professional job I got was doing Bob's Burgers Live. So, working with Bento Box. And that was one of those things. Like a lot of the jobs I get are really funny because I'd be like, how did you? I'm like so thankful to get an opportunity like that. I'm just like, how did you guys find me? They're like, oh, well, our intern like went to a party and like said it was cool and then said you did the visuals and like found you on Instagram. Like just something like that, like
Nice.
right straight up. Just and like yeah, I guess how also back to VJing, how that can be just an outlet to just get your shit out there, like just get it on a wall, get it in front of some eyeballs. Yeah, I guess eventually some Hollywood producer is gonna come get lit at some warehouse party. It's not all just zombies, it's some real professionals there and stuff. And so that's how I started getting my first jobs. And Bob's Burger Labs was such a cool experience because I was working with these two people and one of them showed me his art and I was like, oh, your art looks kind of like paper rad. And he's like, I am paper rad. Like no one in LA knows that. Paper Rad's this really dope art collective from Providence. They're really really dope. They did all these like cartoons and TV shows. Now he's the creative director for Bento Box, making Bob's Burgers. So I was like, and I'd go to Bento Box and we'd like have these meetings and we made this whole like visual show for Bob's Burgers Live, which had like puppets and it had the whole cast of Bob's Burgers. We had like two 20K projectors. It was very legit and very
Yeah.
cool to work on something like that. But also really funny because they had all these like they had theoretically all the assets for Bob's Burgers, but they'd be like, oh, we need the word fart to be on the screen. And I was like, well, how should I do that? Like, oh, I don't know, Google like fart. Like everything would be like, we have to like Google stuff and like download YouTube videos rather than to get the official assets from Bob's Burgers, which is funny. Even though it was like at Bob's Burgers.
Yeah, you're
It's
still
funny
just
because
like, just rip it. That's
or they
what.
just kind of using the same techniques that we do, right? If we were gonna be at our home, be like, oh, we need to make this asset. Oh, maybe I'll try Googling it and ripping a YouTube video or something.
Yeah.
And then the next kind of big opportunity I got, which is kind of similarly just straight out of warehouse culture, was I think doing Germany to Berlin, which is a club night, but it was sponsored by the Goethe Institute, and so just straight up sponsored by the German government essentially. And they do these parties in LA and just hooked up the whole scene super hard, like hired so many kind of warehouse people. And I got paid 10 grand to do one night of visuals. So at that time, I thought like going from $200 to 10 grand just was like insane.
Wow.
And And then it was like this really funny kind of experience where they had this kind of concept that someone thought up in some boardroom where the mayor of Berlin was coming to give a speech, and he came and shook hands with the mayor of LA at the time, and they had these cutout letters that said like Reinhardt, or like freedom in German. And then they made a fake button. He pressed the fake button, and then the letters lit up with projection mapping. And so that was the only time where I guess the client was the elected official, and the stress around that moment of him pressing the button and the visuals turning on was so insane. And it's the amount of assistants and who knows what people that just came with like really wide eyed and be like, it's ready, like it's gonna work, right? I'm like, yeah, we're good, But it's like every time he's getting more stressed out. And then it totally did work and it was fine. Everything always works out when I'm involved, by the way.
Of course.
That was just like a really goofy experience. Yeah, just doing visuals for the mayor. I've done visuals for the mayor of Berlin, essentially. Not really, but
that's awesome though.
yeah.
As I don't know, I don't know if it's as budgets go up. It seems like every gig that I've worked on anyway has somebody coming over with like you said, with wide eyes. Like I know that look exactly. Somebody comes to like front of houses, like they're like so freaked out because their ass is on the line if your shit fucks up, and or like they forgot. Like most of the time they're like, you don't have this logo. I'm like, I have everything that you sent to me, and they're like, and you're like, fucking all right, I guess I'm fucking downloading some shit off your Dropbox right now during the show. You know that your artist is on stage now, right? Yeah. You're like, yes, I do. That's why my eyes look like this.
You should like start like pranking those people, or like they come like, oh, like is everything good for the mayor? Like, oh, is there a projector here? Or, like, oh,
what?
Do you
what button moment?
Do you have a computer? Like, oh, we didn't set anything up. Like,
oh, that was today?
That was me, my job? Today? Oh shit. We need a projector, man.
It just like our heart explodes.
Yeah. I'm trying to think like yeah, I think I started doing some music videos, like because if I do music videos where like I'd be fully animated, right? Like do Cinema 4D kind of music videos. And I did a music video all on Unity. And then let me like look at my website really quick. Like also yeah, doing where I just come in as a projectionist to do some visuals for a shot or something, like put visuals on a person or stuff like that. And then the other big one I wanted to talk about that was really sick was I got hit up by a company called Monster Children, and we did a projection map skate video. And they had a full on, and it was Converse, so that was funny. The client was Converse, and
I won't say why.
Yeah, but that was like an amazing job, one of my favorites. And that was kind of also a throwback. Like I wasn't doing any 3D stuff. I was just doing kind of more generative stuff.
Yeah, that's that picture in the back there, right?
Yeah.
So frame from that.
Like a print from the shoot, just sick. We had like a professional skate photographer and skate videographer, and we painted this whole skate park white and projection, kind of shot it in a day, and it was extremely casual and fun. Like the director was like drinking beer and like, yeah, I'll do a kickflip over there, like sweet. The visuals look cool, like good vibe, like how it should be. It shouldn't be like a horrible vibe, toxic vibe. Until like, and yeah, then we had like an opening where we projection mapped the whole side of their building and people skated on it, and we had the art show with the photos. That was a great experience. Yeah. And it was like these professional skaters like Louis Lopez, and I was really impressed by them too, because if I was a skater and we're like, oh, we're gonna turn up all the lights and have some of these like really fast moving abstract visuals over you while you skate, I'd be like, hell no, like I'm gonna die. They didn't complain at all, but I was impressed by it.
Yeah.
Of like the situation, because like kind of making it more difficult for them to skate.
Yeah. just for the art.
Yeah, yeah,
It worked out.
that was super awesome. And yeah, those are like kind of these jobs where I felt like I was breaking out of stuff. And I did visuals on the Tonight Show this month for Kali Uchis.
No shit.
That was cool too.
Congrats, man. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so you could that'd be on YouTube and stuff. And that was another, yeah, another kind of like production, shoot, or more like coming in to do some projection mapping, solve some problems, made some content, which got scrapped. But that's how it goes. Um, so
You
yeah,
were on set doing the projection as well.
yeah. I did the map. It was it was like top down projection, so it was like from the ceiling. But that's always annoying. Um, and but it worked out, and yeah, stuff like that. More in like the music video realm. I always like doing, and I'm always, yeah, music video. Like I did the kind of Kunzite thing with the Unreal, and then coming in to do projection, solve technical projection problems and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So when I look at your stuff and the work that you put out into the world, I mean, you've talked a little bit about how like just putting on these shows and injecting some of your own like original content into them has been pretty. Seems like a driving force in like getting new gigs over
Mm-hmm.
time. A lot of them have sort of come from these shows that you're doing and putting your own stuff out there. Um, as far as like putting your work out onto the internet or out into the world in general, do you have any sort of like philosophy about that or like any sort of strategy to that?
Yeah, I mean, well, so things have really been changing. I'm sure you're aware of this whole like NFT. I think for like the feels like the last like 2 months, um, I've people have only talked to me about NFTs. Like I started like all normal conversation ended, and I just getting like texts that are just like, bro, you heard about NFTs? It's like long lost people never talk to me. They're like, hey, I heard about NFTs. I thought you should do some because of your stuff. I'm just joking, but I mean,
No, I know what you mean, man, for
there's
sure.
like a shift, right? And there's like this change. I think that I also take that stuff really seriously. Like sometimes we'll spend a month making a personal piece that I put on Instagram, and I did this kind of recent stuff with this Hollow Garden series that I put on my Instagram, and kind of like, and it ends up taking a month, not in actual time, but like I learned like Substance Designer, and I learned ZBrush, and I did like VR modeling, I did ZBrush modeling, I did Marvelous Designer, I did Substance, and I did Octane. So it was like this whole, figuring out all the kinks and all those steps to just kind of put something out there that is, I felt is like an asset that's made from scratch, right? Like not using like pre-made assets and stuff like that. And there's like hard surface modeling. I was like building these kind of, and it's kind of inspired by NFTs, where I'm kind of thinking about this collection of digital assets and this fervor around it, and also the idea of everyone staying inside, and it's very dystopian in a weird way, especially when our predominant way of cultural exchange used to be these events, and there's some problems with that, but there's also like what I was talking about, there's this aura to that, even if it is just light and sound kind of bouncing around, and like inspired made these kind of pieces, where they're kind of almost growing these holograms or harvesting these holograms, and these holograms are kind of a natural essence, and those are kind of the NFT, right? Like the kind of sense you can't simulate freedom, but you can. It's still a simulation, but I'm also making a simulation, and kind of like spinning around, but yeah, they like get they're like yeah. There's always like this sense of I want people to look at stuff and think about the story behind it. Always trying to invent like a different world, not just fall into these like sci-fi tropes, but try and think of ideas and how these people would be in these little environments. Um, that is like, yeah, a big interest and passion. So I think I'm putting that stuff out there like that. Like I think like just spending a lot of time on something and taking it serious, I guess. And with the NFT stuff, I think I've discovered, you do an NFT, they're like, oh, you need to promote it on Twitter. I'm like, shit, don't have a Twitter, so like make a Twitter and get into Discord. And I've recently started a Discord group, and that has been awesome. Like I've really been finding some solace in things beyond Facebook, Instagram shit. Like anything outside of that, I think is a growing, interesting community. Anything inside of that is like a dying, decaying zombie flesh.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
It's a really hard question of like, yeah, how to promote like your stuff. Like how do you approach that philosophy? Just out of curiosity, like how do you this YouTube and different things? And...
Yeah, it's difficult. It really is, and I'm curious about the way that you do it, because I think we do it kind of differently. In that, like, the stuff that you put out is it's very identifiable as your stuff. I think you've been able to kind of cultivate this style, which I do not think that I have a style at all, which I think about quite a bit.
Do you feel like you are interested in unifying it though, or like is it more?
I don't know. I just think that my way of working and operating is very like I sort of have short attention span for things. Like I kind of want to try something new, and then, oh, that's neat, let me try another thing, versus like really deeply exploring an idea as a series for an extended period of time to like get find the deep corners of it, which has its pros and cons, I think, each one. And so like Instagram has been kind of difficult for me because everything I put out is kind of a whole different thing. I started doing like series of 3 just to like make it look a little bit nice, but it's like if you scroll down my feed, it's fucking insanity of just like sporadic shit, and like 3 months later I'll post some other thing that I've been fucking with, and then 3 months later I'm doing Notch, and the next thing is some unreal bullshit. And like, so it's been hard to sort of gain traction there. But what has worked for me is because I'm doing a lot of different things, just like talking to people about what I'm learning right now seems to do the best for me. So whether that's actual conversations with people, or like getting into like user group type, more like forum style stuff, or now like this YouTube stuff, sharing tutorials and stuff, people are like, oh, you're Notch, cool, like let's, you know what I mean?
I feel like I'm discovering the same thing of like just trying to kind of grow this tech community, make it not as competitive, and try and jump in and be a community member. But I think I was thinking about this other thing with what you're talking about, with kind of having a style or an arch, where I think on the flip side of that, it can be a negative thing, right? Where I don't know if you experience this a lot, but I always feel like I'm because in the past, maybe the model, right, is you're maybe releasing stuff as breadcrumbs to clients to a degree. Before this whole NFT thing, right, there's kind of just a separate, now there's kind of 2 lanes, right? Or maybe you're just releasing it as an NFT and it's not necessarily related to your client work, or it's personal work that you want to monetize. But I guess for me, yeah, like I feel put in a box a lot of the time, especially with the projection stuff, where like, oh, this guy can do it. He can set up a projector, or he does this kind of thing, and it feels like I'm trying to put up this. I'm trying to do stuff that, yeah, maybe has a story or a style to, but I'm also just trying to be like, this is what I do, right? Like this is what I'm interested in, and this is like the kind of style and the stuff, and it feels like that it's coming back around to me. Of like they're like sending me a piece from like a year ago of like we want this, or you know, which is fine, but I just feel, I guess it just feels like there's like a huge delay sometimes of trying to communicate your skills and what you're into to clients, and um, maybe even not, that doesn't get communicated.
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah, like that's just like a tricky process, right? Of like, because also like maybe a lot of the clients you're getting don't, yeah, like oh you know, maybe some client go, oh, is it cool if we do it in Unreal or do it in Cinema 4D? They're just like, what? Or some clients have a really engaging discussion, and it's hard to, I guess, navigate that or like figure that out, and like, and then
Yeah.
with art, right, there's like all these stylistic kind of aesthetic questions, right, which you're touching on. So like people are coming with you like, oh, this is a good like sci-fi guy, this guy's like metal and does like dark stuff with skulls, and you know.
Right. Yeah. I see you got some VJ packs on your website. You're doing music videos and like sort of client work. You're doing shows. I won't say client work, like content type work,
Mhm.
and then doing like performance and projection and things like that. What's like the percentage breakdown of like how you work, and
Oh,
what those like revenue streams or what the like time spent on those things is for you?
like in my like in hours of what I'm spending my time on.
Yeah, like we're either hours or how you make your money, or what like
Mhm.
what the breakdown of what how much the jobs that you're getting, or I don't know, however you want to break it down. Just give us a sense of like, I like to see where people lie on this spectrum
Yeah.
between like performance, content, and like product output.
Mhm. Well, I think the majority of my time weirdly goes into creating personal work in a weird way. Like any downtime I have where I'm not directly like under a deadline or something, I'm, you know, I have 3 or 4 pieces that I'm working on right now that just aren't quite like, oh, what if I add a little detail here? Like that's like a whole day I spent on stuff, um, and that's just kind of the general movement of trying to get better, right? Like I really don't feel like I'm at the, not like, okay, we're good, we're sailing. I still feel like I'm learning to do this. I'm, and it's awesome that I'm able to support myself along the way. Because like, and even when you get, when you get it together where you're paying your rent and you're getting gigs and stuff, and that kind of happened to me when I got those original gigs. That is just the start of the journey. That's like the hell of capitalism we live in. But when you are able to support yourself, that is where the work really starts, because now you're free from distractions to a degree, and then you really need to start learning. And that's still where I'm at 4 years later. And stuff like Gumroad, for example, I had a lot of people on Facebook in specific, strange people hitting me up for VJ packs, and I eventually kind of caved and did start doing it. And I was really surprised by how well that worked out. Like I maybe earned 4 grand of residual income over a short time doing those VJ packs, and that completely dropped off with the pandemic, which
Yeah.
makes sense. But I do, yeah, doing stuff like that is really dope. Whatever, and like, and a Gumroad kind of style store is really nice in between of NFTs and client work or whatever. And I'm sure everyone who's doing this stuff would have some kind of useful kernel for another artist to do something with. Um, that you could, yeah, maybe it's like motion capture data, maybe it's a model, maybe it's like an Octane texture pack, you know, something, right? Like I think it's worthwhile to just put that out there. And like my promotion for my Gumroad was maybe just 2 or 3 Facebook posts and like a VJ Loops group. Like I
Yeah.
think you do that as well.
Hmm.
It seems like yours are working out as well. But like, yeah, that can just be an easy thing. That could be like a dope project to just assign yourself and put out there, and it works. And I see people. There's also kind of like this chain of thought where people are strictly residual income. Like they've kind of they've broken out of client work by just doing the kind of store asset pack um, concept, right? That's the whole kind of avenue, and it's
Yeah.
worth checking out. Um, and then everything else is really random. So yeah, sometimes maybe my week will be consumed by a client job or something. Um, but on like the date, it feels like really what 90% of what my time goes into is yeah, just creating stuff in 3D. So trying to make something in 3D, some kind of scene or project or concept. And I guess that's also maybe where I go to just kind of jam, right? Like that's just like the comfortable space to maybe turn an idea into a reality. And then sometimes that once it is in 3D, then maybe another idea comes out of that. You know, maybe you that make the models and textures and stuff, and then an idea for an animation, bring in some motion capture and stuff comes into it. And then yeah, kind of trying to do that, finish that, and put that out there. You know, looking for clients essentially.
Yeah.
And just the hey, this is what I'm doing. Like, check it out. Like,
Do you besides doing shows and like Instagram and the website, what other ways do you put yourself out there or like show work to people? Are there any other things that you do, or is
well,
that
yeah, I
mostly?
think recently I've tried to start this Discord community. Only this past week I've started, so it's still just getting going. But I really wish I got into that sooner. Where Discord you can make your own server, and I'm just trying to kind of promote, get the people I know together with similar interests, where they can, with a safe place to share that kind of stuff we are working on and aren't sure about, a safe place to be like, hey, what do you guys think about this NFT idea? Like, what platform should it go on, or do you think this could be improved somehow? Like that is what I'm going for right now, and I've really found a lot of value in that. Just the kind of conversations I've been having on there, and just kind of reaching out to people and trying to tap them into it, get the conversation going. And then yeah, beyond that, just I don't know. Like I feel like I'm really not. I feel like I'm really bad at it, honestly. But besides being like a little bit consistent with Instagram, but like I think people who are good at Instagram are like just posting stuff like every 2 days, 3 days, or like I like come in, I'm like, bam, check it out, render, and then I'm like gone for 2 months,
Yeah.
and then just like come back 2 months later, like, oh, bam, which
Yeah.
is like not the right way to do it.
Yeah,
Um,
I always joke around that if I'm posting on Instagram, then I'm not working because like
yeah,
that's
yeah. Like,
it's like
you
every
see,
couple months I like come back. I'm like personal
yeah,
shit,
yeah,
time to post, and
you
then
see
I just
a job
completely
right now,
fucking
it's all like, yeah. So I think people have much deeper, better strategies than me. I do think also the work ethic of kind of waking up and kind of getting into the studio and getting going. And I watched this Ash Thorpe video that really inspired me recently. And like that's the kind of thing I'm also like sharing on the Discord of like these videos that I'm watching. But that there's a lot of things about that really inspired me. Whereas Ash Thorpe is kind of prolific, and he's kind of in the 3D realm. But what's really cool about him is he is almost like a director. Like he kind of synthesizes all this stuff together just to make these really detailed films, like very high concept detailed films, maybe using 3D softwares. And he was talking about kind of the juggling concept of, if you are in the states of doing personal work, it's really easy. And I got someone like how that thing took a month, but it like really shouldn't have taken a month. Whereas maybe instead of having taken a month on a render, like do 3 renders or something, and you'd be bouncing around. So you can kind of keep, you just have like some, like you kind of assign yourself 4 or 5 projects and kind of wake up and get into it. And as soon as you get stuck somewhere, something's not really working out, just get into the next thing. And I think by the time you maybe got into the next thing, done a couple things, then you are ready to go back into the original problem and solve it, rather than kind of beating your head against the wall a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And the other thing I've been working on, which has been kind of fun, like I ended up doing all these short films over the quarantine, and then ended up being like almost like 5 minutes or 6 minutes of content. And then I have this friend who's like he works in the Criterion Collection, band named Civil, and makes amazing music, has all these amazing synthesizers. So he's been soundtracking my kind of quarantine film, and it's kind of like this dark sci-fi thing. Maybe we could show some clips of it. But that's been a cool kind of just personal project, I guess, just like making a film, and it took like a year, or something. but then and then the really funny thing too about doing 3D, every single time I almost have this experience where I get to the like 2 months go by and like you finish something and you're like, then you look at it and you're like, wow, could have done every aspect of this better with like the knowledge I have now. But then it's like if you just like spent another month like fixing it with the knowledge you do have, or it's like it's also a funny like problem, right? You just kind of That's another thing I kind of recommend, is just accepting your faults, kind of owning them a little bit, and just doing it better the next time. Like maybe rather than not really, like, because there's that video, there's some almost embarrassing things to me about it, like about the animation or some textures, just like some funny things. Maybe some people wouldn't notice that I just did by a lack of knowledge, and then but by finishing that, right, I figured out I like learned this tremendous amount.
Yeah, that's a difficult thing to contend with over and over and over again. Is like you pretty much, if you're growing at all, then like you pretty much hate everything you make by the time you put it out, because you're like, fuck, dude, like everything is, you just see everything wrong with it because you're so deep into it and you've learned so much over the course of it that like by the end you're like, man, why the fuck did I even put that out? It's so I could do that again now 20 times better. But the same thing's going to happen. The same thing happens every time.
Yeah, so you have to kind of like let that not trip you up too much. And I think the number one like kind of behavior that will get rewarded is the sense of jumping in. So whether it's like whether it's like a new software you feel uncomfortable with, just going in there and feeling uncomfortable is like, that would be the most rewarding kind of learning experience. And like the same kind of stuff I went through with projectors and using VGA cables. I learned this like kind of core video and technical knowledge in the field by just jumping in, doing something that I wasn't qualified for, and and it's like not listening to those gatekeepers and people. Like if someone had seen what I was doing back then, it would have just been like, oh, this is so whack, and you don't know what you're doing, and this looks terrible, and your clothes suck, and blah blah, like making fun of you. It's like, you just got to do it, feel uncomfortable, kind of overcome that by kind of like fucking up in the field, and in the software is like kind of jumping in.
Nice. All right. Rapid fire section. It's just going to be some favorites. What is your render engine of choice?
Octane.
Do you have a go-to Cinema 4D plugin?
I love Drop to Floor.
It's so useful.
anything by Merc. I love all
hell yeah.
Experimental Merc plugins.
Nice. A Resolume effect or generator?
Oh, man. That's like an intense one. I can only pick one.
Spout off a few if you got a few.
I mean, obviously, so yeah, like Shaper and Lines and Cloner can just take you just to amazing places.
Yeah, I feel like you built like years worth of sets off just those three.
Yeah, exactly. And like it's like using like a 3D asset with alpha in combination with those kind of things is great. And like I think back in the day too, like there's something really fun about, you know, maybe have like a character with alpha, and then you have like a background, and you know, like layering, like like the creativity that can happen in Resolume, even with assets.
Hell yeah.
That's what's amazing about Resolume.
Yes. Um, do you have a MIDI controller of choice?
Yeah, this in the background, Akai one, this one.
Is that the APC 40
Yeah,
Mark II?
yeah. These are
Nice.
like those work out the box with Resolume. The number one problem with that is, I don't know, 70% of the time there's not enough desk space for me to use it.
Yeah, they are. Those are one of the bigger ones. I've got the
So it's good to have a small one, I would
I
say.
got the OG back there, but I've been using the APC Mini quite a bit too.
Yeah, you need a small. I think that'd be my thing for a starting BJ. I would get a cheaper, get the smallest one you can, because weirdly desk space is a huge, this kind of thing, right? Because you're like
Yeah, desk
being a
space
BJ,
and outlets and USB ports are like the limiting factor.
yeah. Don't just go to Coachella and expect you can just plug something in. Like you have to get clearance for that.
Yeah. Let's see. Is there a visual artist you're hyped on right now?
I think I might just like throw it again to. I mean, there's so many. There's so many amazing artists, but I think recently kind of getting into Ash, inspired by kind of just Ash Thorpe. Um, I love Vitaly Bulgarov in the same kind of capacity of just being this incredible maestro and having a really strong vision throughout the whole thing. And like I watched like a talk by him, and it is so insane. Like he's talking about using like Navy SEALs. He would like drown himself in his pool, you know, like to
Super intense shit.
to like some kind of, like he used the kind of Navy SEALs training and apply it to modeling assets faster,
Wow.
stuff like that. You know, like it was this level to it that kind of frightened me by how horrible and lazy my workflow is, but then also that, you know, just greatness does. It's not just greatness does, especially in the 3D realm, right? It's like it's not just, you're not just going to be gifted some greatness. It's like people that get there truly sacrifice and work for it. That's also what I like about 3D too. I think that it kind of equals the playing field. It's like, yeah, man, like that shit just didn't fucking model itself. Like someone fucking worked at that,
Mm,
put some blood into it.
awesome.
I think Vitaly kind of personifies that to me.
You got to send me that link. I don't think I've seen that one, but that sounds intense. I know his work though.
Yeah.
He's insane. Uh, music artist.
Oh, that's a hard one. That's also just, I love so much kind of music. I love Drab Majesty. It's the one I go back to a lot. That's someone I got to do visuals for and meet and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
I rock the goth, LA goth vibe.
Nice. Sick. And all right. Do you have, I mean, you've sprinkled this with a bunch of gems already, but do you have any advice to somebody who wants to get into this field? Like any one thing that they should know or keep in mind to be successful in this? Anything like that?
I guess it just takes, I certainly don't feel super successful or anything. I think it just takes, yeah, some perseverance. I think knowing I think standing up for yourself is incredibly important, even if you're maybe at a lack of clients and jobs. I think how you get the you know, kind of lead the conversation with clients is a really important skill. and then just working and being consistent. Like I think, like I was saying, you don't need to any prerequisites. Just get on some YouTube tutorials, start creating your own vision, make sure it's your own vision, and start putting it out there. And you're gonna get a return on it. It's not gonna be silence. You know, if you're putting in the work, you're gonna have a reaction, and that's all you need to do to keep that cycle. Work, release, do it again. You don't get a reaction to the first one, do another one, do 10 more.
Hell yeah, man. Well, thank you so much. Where can people find out more about you on the internet?
I have a website, cloaking.us. Got the Instagram. My Discord is in the Instagram bio. Come join the group, say what's up, talk on the Discord.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I'll drop a bunch of links down below. YouTube shit. Awesome, man. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment your favorite Resolume plugin in the comments.